Hey guys, and welcome back for another video. Today I'm going to be running you through my top 10 tips for new players in Guild Wars 2. Some of the things I'm going to cover have been mentioned in previous guides, but in case you missed those or haven't watched them yet, they'll all be here in one convenient place. Also, a few things on this list have never been mentioned in another guide, so if you've seen my previous guides and you're curious about maybe a few more tips and tricks, watch on. Anyway guys, let's go ahead and get this thing started.
Number 1.
Alright, so the first tip that I'm going to give you guys is a pretty basic one. If you are a paid player, meaning not free to play, then you can log in once a day to get a login reward. I highly recommend logging in once per day, even if you're not going to play Guild Wars 2 that day. Maybe you have other plans, maybe you're not gaming at all, but make sure you log in, take the time, and get these rewards. Not only do you get an exclusive currency every few days called laurels that you can use to buy all sorts of stuff, but you can get crafting supplies, tomes of knowledge, which are free character levels, and even some of the gem store items for free just by logging in.
Number 2.
As early as level 9, you'll be given some harvesting tools that you can use to gather all the nodes in Tyria. Make sure you always carry additional tools because these things run out as you use them. Also, be sure that the tools that you have equipped can actually harvest the node that you're trying to gather. Using the wrong tool only results in trash items that clutter up your inventory, and you've now wasted that node and can't harvest it until it respawns.
Number 3.
Similar to the second tip, make sure you always carry salvage kits. Your inventory is going to fill up with all sorts of loot as you run through the game. You're going to need to break down all the stuff that you don't need for your character or alt characters, and a salvage kit is the fastest way to manage this problem. Also, as with harvesting tools, make sure that you have the right salvage kit. Basic salvage kits should take care of most of your blues and greens and whites, but if you end up with rares, exotics, or even ascended gear, you need to make sure that you have a high enough level salvage kit to get the maximum yield from those items. A good rule of thumb: rare items over level 68 should be salvaged with a master salvage kit or better. This has a chance to get you some globs of ectoplasm, and trust me, you're going to need this stuff later on.
Number 4.
This might go without saying for some players, but make sure you read what your skills do, and when you're a high enough level, read what your traits do as well. Not only will this help you be the most effective version of your profession, but knowing what these skills and traits do is pivotal to build crafting later on. Maximizing your potential is all about synergy, so knowing if a trait is going to buff a certain skill that you have on your bar is something you should know.
Number 5.
PvE in Guild Wars 2 is all about exploration and completion. While exploring this world is great, after completing several maps you might get a little worn out. Or even maybe map completion just isn't for you. Even if that's the case, make sure that you go through as many maps as you can and at least get the main waypoints. Get as many waypoints as you can. This will make it far easier to meet up with other players, and Guild Wars 2 has been notorious for placing new events in old maps. So the more that you can fast travel, the better.
Number 6.
Try your absolute best not to concern yourself with the stats of your character until you hit level 80. You're going to get all kinds of loot with varying stats as you play, and if those aren't all in alignment, it's not the end of the world. Buying higher level weapons and armor on the trade post is just a waste. The personal story is going to give you most of what you need to get through the content, and that content doesn't require a well-tuned build in order to complete. Additionally, I would say it's a waste even to slot runes and sigils into your armor and weapons for more damage well into the later levels, if not again until level 80. In my time in game, I've played buildless characters with random stats until level 80, and I had no problems completing the content.
Number 7.
Guild Wars 2 is an RPG, so obviously one of your main goals is going to be leveling up. Towards the beginning of this process, if you find yourself bored with your surroundings, or you've simply just completed all you can complete in a certain area and still need a few levels, head over to the other starting areas. Outside of each racial capital, there are low-level starting zones that you can complete to better level up your character. And each one has its own theme, so if you happen to get bored with your surroundings, just switch over to the next racial starting zone. Not only does this give you extra objectives, it keeps things fresh, and you unlock more waypoints.
Number 8.
Crafting is a pretty big part of Guild Wars 2. Ascended gear, the highest tier gear in the game, can only be crafted or purchased from high-level merchants. Also, this game has a plethora of recipes that you can complete to get different back pieces, weapon skins, and so on. So it's a really good idea to make crafting as convenient as possible. For me, and this is just my opinion, but also I think it holds up, Black Citadel is the best place to craft, and I'll explain why. The Black Citadel has a triangle of waypoints that have basically everything you need right there. You have a trade post waypoint, and then 2 waypoints in between all of the crafting zones. Also, if you use a waypoint in a city, it doesn't cost anything. Also, the load screens are usually pretty fast in Black Citadel because, well, not a lot of people spend all their time there. The reason this is so helpful is because if you're out of an item, but you have a fair amount of gold on you, you can purchase it on the trade post, use the waypoint to pick it up, and waypoint right back to the crafting station that you were at before. Also, all crafting stations are also access to your bank, making all of this just that much more convenient.
Number 9.
As you play this game, you're going to be rewarded with all sorts of loot. And inevitably, you're going to want to sell some of it that you don't need to make yourself a little bit of a profit, or you're going to need something and you're going to need to buy that off the trade post. Either one of these scenarios is typically going to take you to the trade post. Now, whether you're buying or selling, there's one thing to keep in mind. There is a buy now or sell now button tied to each one of these actions, and if you do that, you're losing money. If you have the time to wait, it's always best to list something you're trying to sell or put in an offer for something you're trying to buy, as those amounts are typically, if not always, lower than the buy now or sell now option. This method does require you to wait a little bit longer, but you're going to save money in the process.
Number 10.
Alright, we made it all the way to number 10, so this is my final piece of advice for you guys. And it's sort of a vague piece of advice, but make sure you set goals in Guild Wars 2. One of Guild Wars 2's greatest strengths and greatest weaknesses is that it has so much for you to do that it's easy to get sidetracked running around the world doing all sorts of stuff. Now that sounds great, but it can actually be kind of a deterrent over time. With little to no direction, you end up doing a whole lot of small things instead of working towards a common goal, and a lot of players can be turned off by this. Make sure you have something you're working towards, be it an alt character or mastering a particular type of content like raids or fractals, even just tracking down certain skins or trying to amass a small fortune, completing achievements or collections. Whatever you do in game, just make sure that you have some focus. And if you're a person that typically struggles with this sort of thing, I would recommend joining a guild. Not only do guilds bring even more content to the table, but a lot of times they do specific activities outside of those that can kind of focus your overall objective. If your guild plays fractals, raids, world versus world, well, now you have a goal. You have something to work towards. Now, I wouldn't know personally because I don't have a guild, but you get what I'm saying. It's a community of people that can help focus you when you kind of just want to run around the world and do everything. So that's it for my top 10 guys, but I do have 2 quick honorable mentions, side note type things to share with you. Firstly, do not be afraid to use the wiki. I'm going to leave a link down in the description. I try to do that in most of my videos. The wiki is a well of information, especially when it comes to those crafting recipes that you just can't quite figure out on your own. And secondly, and lastly, Heart of Thorns is a great expansion for the features that you unlock when you purchase it, but for overall overall content, it was a bit smaller than I think a lot of players were expecting, so I would recommend purchasing this particular expansion when it's on sale. They typically post this on Twitter, or if you frequent their main page, it'll be on there. Just keep your eyes peeled for a sale if you don't already own the expansion. Anyway guys, that's it for this top 10. If you think I forgot something, go ahead and leave it in the comments so players can read through that and maybe get a little bit more help there. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.